Yes. Mr. Davis. Here. Ms. Ellis. Mr. Worthy. Here. Ms. Davis. Here. Bobby. Here. Ms. Williams. Ms. Gordon. After the year, later, COVID classes.
Thank you. Will you please stand and join me in a silent meditation, and then we'll do the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. We have our agenda before us this evening. Is there a motion to amend or adopt the agenda? Ms. Ellis, thank you. Ms. Davis, all in favor of adopting the agenda? Thank you. We have a number of action items tonight. The first one is the action to approve principal hire recommendations.
Mr. Bobby, there's a total of 5 recommendations that I would like to forward to the Board of Education this evening to assume the role of principal and our school assistant. I'd like to recommend Dr. Stacy Carson become the principal at Howard B. Sproul, Dr. Beverly Harper become the principal at Judy Harris, and Dr. Andrea Neer to become the principal at Chase High School. There were 2 finalists, and only 2 finalists forwarded to the district level for the high school principalship at both Cedar Shoals and Clarke Central High School. The 2 individuals were Dr. Swade Huff and Derek Maxwell. It's my recommendation that Dr. Swade Huff be appointed to the role of principal at Clarke Central High School. Derek Maxwell be appointed to the role of principal at Cedar Shoals High School. You also have in front of you 2 other recommendations related to HR. That I think, in terms of the audiences being masks, where a lot of the interest is for the community. That's the conclusion of my recommendation.
Thank you. Yes, Will.
I know that we accept that recommendation.
Ms. Davis, any all in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is review of the West Broad Restoration proposals.
But the Clarke County School District, you just.
Bobby, we received a total of 3 proposals on request information for education. The information in the packet. 1 recommendation came from the Athens Land Trust. There was a 2nd response from the Northeast Georgia Business Alliance, working in conjunction with the Athens High Industrial School and the Vernon Harris High School Alumni Association. We have the 3rd proposal submitted by Clarke County School District.
Thank you. And Go ahead.
Yes, it's my recommendation that the Board of Education allow administration at this time to vet the three recommendations, proposals that have been received.
Yes.
What I would like to do, what I would like to do is, as the administration is doing that, for board members and people go out and ask, submit written questions that we get. So those are our individual questions.
Yes, I like to make some comments here. I'm uncomfortable with the second item on RFIs. I'll tell you why, because the call meeting we had on March the 27th, it was not done correctly. RFIs, 5 board members voted for that, 2 voted against it. And I made it clear then that you cannot vote on something of this sort unless it was recommended by the superintendent. And it was not recommended by the superintendent. So all of this, I'm not even concerned about it. I'm just letting you know. So I'm going to stick to the law, stick to the rule on that.
Thank you. Anything else we can do? Okay, thank you, Mr. Reddy. Yes.
We accept the superintendent's recommendation to the
Second that motion. Ellis? Any questions, comments, concerns?
I would still like to make the amendment that. I can see the administration go through this process of evaluation, but still with a number of questions. So that would be my amendment. Or that would
So is that different from how we do business?
I would hope not. But I just wanted to make that point.
Right, and so it sounds like, less of an amendment, more sort of a statement of expectations.
Okay.
Somebody can ask what time frame.
We would bring back a, well, the question is, Williams, to be candid, we've been placed in a very awkward position as an administrative team. The fact we were proposing, we have submitted a proposal to use a district facility. And so we need time to see if there are any opportunities for partnership with the 2 other proposals that have been submitted in conjunction with our proposal. It would ultimately be my recommendation that we try to, and you'll see in our proposal that we want to leverage the West Broad facility for community school use. We want to expand our early learning opportunities. We want to create a community health center. We want to move our parent information resource center there. And we also want to work in conjunction with any community group that is interested in the historic preservation of that facility at West Broad. Those are our 4 main priorities in our proposal. What we want to do, we have the deadline for these proposals we're due today. And so we want to see if there's any opportunity for partnership with the other 2 proposals that were submitted. But I'll bring it full circle to say that we're in a very unique situation that we felt that we needed to develop a proposal and submit a proposal to use a district facility. I think in the community conversation, there's been a lot of talk about will West Broad be used for district office space or not? We've come to the conclusion that the West Broad property is not large enough for our district office needs. But that does not eliminate the opportunity for us to leverage that property for betterment of children and youth in this community. And so it's our hope that we will have a chance to review these proposals over the next few weeks. To get to your question, we would hope that by June 14th, we could have a final recommendation for the board's action.
So how would this mesh with our next item is to look at a date to discuss and deliberate. So how does this recommendation mess with that?
Well, you, as a board, you may say, we need you have 3 more board meetings scheduled. You have a board meeting scheduled for May 31st, June 7th, and June 14th. You may come back and ask for administration to accelerate our work. I'm sharing with you no later than the 14th, we'll be ready with the recommendation. If you would like us to accelerate the work, we can. Because again, you have scheduled meetings on the 31st and 7th. And if that's where you would want us to make that final recommendation to the board, we can be prepared to do so.
Yes, Dr. Means was the impetus for the district, if I heard you correctly, there was a sense of obligation to respond because it was district property. Is that fair characterization?
No, sir.
Okay, so what was the impetus in terms of, I mean, obviously there is, much need in the community around the West Broad. What was the rationale of the district itself?
It's been a unique year for me here. There's been a lot of what I would say unsettled issues that are massive board level issues that haven't been addressed. If you recall, Mr. Davis and board members, it may be my second day on the job where you had a property committee meeting and we were having this discussion about West Broad. We haven't had a chance to really just to pause and figure out what is the vision for the school system. Some board members and I made a visit to some schools in Atlanta this fall. And that's when I shared with the board, and have been sharing with the board and community. I have a vision around collective impact work and creating community schools for children and families and community members in Athens, Clarke County. As the conversation continued to unfold around West Broad, we were hoping that there would be a point where we could share that vision. But we felt this was the process that you created. And so in order to have that vision articulated, we submitted a proposal. Because this was the process, right? And so to honor the process, that's what we've done.
So let me ask, obviously this has been a topic for a long time, a number of years. You're preceding me on the board, preceding some people. And I see the district put together is very useful because you're right. I think the conversation on the district side has been limited to that office use space and not a more expansive conversation. I see it, and I hope that there's space for it not to be sort of a zero-sum game, because we have some incredible community partners that have been long advocates of and allies of all of our children in the schools. Can you articulate, can you talk a minute about how if you time out for a minute, for a couple of weeks for the district to do this work, how this moves the conversation forward in a fruitful, meaningful way for the entire community?
I think and I haven't had a chance to read the two other proposals. It is important to note, Ms. Veronica Jackson, who's in procurement, sent me an email today saying that there was an inquiry about submitting, someone called in the community about submitting their proposal. They missed the deadline. I haven't responded to Ms. Jackson yet, but I would assume that the board would want to stay firm with the new deadline. But that's your call. But I do want you to be aware that at least one community group that decided that they had a proposal to submit. To answer your question, Mr. Bybee, I think we need time to really look at these two other proposals to see how can we be partners and if there's room for a partnership. The vision that we laid out in our response is very clear. We believe that by creating more classroom space for office-building learning, that fits within a community. Research shows that if you can work with young people at the early childhood level, that helps their academic growth. Having a healthcare clinic would be helpful. We are currently in discussions and working with UGA's School of Social Work to have a partnership through our professional development school district work. And it's to have a space where they can provide those services would be good. Having our parent information and resource center there versus having families try to jockey and find parking spots in this current parking lot, we think would be more family friendly. There are times where there are disciplinary hearings that young people will get in trouble. They have hearings. They have to come to this facility. And during the school year, when they come to this facility, they're coming while their friends who are students either at Classic City or Career Academy see them walking in to this type of situation. There's just not a lot of confidentiality. We would hope to see that center be an opportunity for us to have more confidential meetings and not have the people who are in the midst of hearings exposed to their peers. Those are our priorities. If they're, and I fail to mention again, the historic preservation of West Broad School is important to us. As you look at the mural right on the wall, and the fact that we have an opportunity to meet in the Heritage Room often in this building, it does not, it is very important to us collectively as an administrative team to preserve the history of education in that district. And so if there's alignment with the other two proposals, with what we've laid out in our proposal, we are ecstatic to work with those partners.
Yes, I'm hearing some of the same conversations that we're called meeting March 27th. And it's scary to me. And I'll tell you why. Because I went back and I said in that meeting, I hear from some of the board members something totally different that I heard 3 years ago. So I went back and retrieved minutes, 2015, I have to give my portfolio. And actually 4 sets of minutes. I'm the committee meeting, where the committee meeting was arranged here at committee meeting, and where it was decided that we were going to sell the property at Mitchell Bridge and also look at renovating the property at the Old West Broad School to become the central office. All of this is in print, folks. Now, lawfully, you can't go back and change minutes. All of this. And I keep hearing about the space. When all of this was brought forward, no one said anything about God. The space was not brought. And I tell you the reason why. You have built 3 elementary schools. Instead of just building them on one level, what do? We go up. you don't have no space. Now, when SC design, I got a paper, get a rendering of all of this. So, okay, you got enough parking space, etc. All of a sudden, the garden. So if the garden remains there, you only have 30 parking spaces. I would never vote for that. Look at the parking problem we have right here in this building. So all of this is in the minutes 3 years ago. I repeat, from the property committee, also for board meetings. And if I have to go back and retrieve all board meetings are recorded and have to plead to the audience, I'll do that.
I don't think we
Well,
so
from what I'm hearing from some board members that voted for this, yes, we do. Whether we need it or not, if I have to do it, I will do it.
your recommendation is to go back to the old plan? That's what you're.
I never left old plan. It was said that we were going to renovate Old West Broad School to be the central office. Space was not an issue. As I said, we are never run out of space for that. Okay? I never left the old issue. Never did.
The recommendation before us is that it's
It's a modification. So it's a slight pivot from what Mr. Worthy just articulated in our presentation, in our proposal. We're sharing the fact that we don't believe at this point in time the West Broad property would be sufficient space for our entire district office. It's my opinion, I've shared this with the board, it's my opinion that we need to find another location other than the West Broad property for district office space. But that doesn't negate the fact that there's still a level of usage that we can leverage at the West Broad property. And I think that's where the conversation kind of derailed in March, where it was a all or nothing. Either the district's going to use it for district office space or something else. And we never, again, maybe I'm not saying this perfectly enough. That's where we felt we needed to submit a formal proposal to share with the board and the community. There's another vision. We have another vision for West Broad. And we think there's an opportunity. Again, we want to look at the priorities and what the proposals, the other two proposals that were submitted. There may be an opportunity for us to partner with community groups to make these priorities that we outline in our proposal happen and make it in conjunction with one another. But that I hear what you're saying, Mr. Worthy. It's the district office is one of those other massive issues that we need to address at some point. We just don't believe that the West Broad property would be sufficient. However, again, just want to be clear, that doesn't mean that we didn't have a collective interest in that property to use it to serve the community and children in a different way.
One other piece, when we voted 3 years ago, we also said, okay, this is going to be a part of the Steel Office line. $135 million. West Broad campus is listed in there, right as that. And if I'm not mistaken, $6 million of that money, which would be out here, people saying, we don't have enough money to renovate that building. Oh, yes, we do, because it's in Steel Office line. It's in there. And what type of message would we send to voters when Steel Office sets coming up? When they are voting for this and they re-renege on it, we have to be very careful with what we do and the decisions that we make, folks. I'm a lawful person, you all know that. You've heard that from me for years since I've been on this board when I was at City Children. I follow the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law gets you in trouble.
That's a great point. Mr. From the language of clause 5, is what we're talking about sort of still in within the mandate that we're voted on for clause 5?
I'll have to defer to legal counsel. I've talked to legal counsel briefly about this, but there is a level of flexibility responsibility and how we leverage the funds for schools. In other words, we're not locked in on using those funds specifically for district office renovation. West Broad was listed on the ballot, and there were intentions shared by my predecessor on the board, but the way that the ballot was crafted, it gave you flexibility into using those dollars in a number of ways.
Thank you.
Thank you. My colleagues, there are just a few questions that I've got in terms of, one is that the property has not been standing right. So there's a community process that's already begun. Contrary to the distinguished sorority, there were agreements that were reached at that point too. There were studies done, and we won't get into that. But some may say that the district was doing two different things at the same time. But in terms of the proposal as stated by you, it says that the entire 32,800 square feet that the plan proposes to use all of that. So I'm trying to figure out how we go into partnership if we say, we need the whole space, but we will go into, possibly go into partnership. I'm specifically concerned about the ongoing, the garden and the construction apprenticeship programs that are going on over there or should be going on over there. So how does all that, how does the garden fit into this?
I don't know. I don't know. But what I do know is that I've been in a board meeting earlier this year with the board, and the board said that you don't want to have any children on a wait list for early childhood education. That's correct. Okay. And so we wouldn't have any children on a wait list if we had more classroom space at the West Broad. And you would create a community school hub if you're creating more classroom space for early childhood education. You're creating a health clinic in that building. You are preserving the historic nature of that facility. There's a lot of different things in our proposal. You're creating a parent and information and resource center. There are a lot of different priorities, and that's why I use the term priorities. There's a lot of other priorities that meet the needs of children and families in our proposal. Does the garden meet one of those priorities? I would have to read the proposal. We just received it at noon today. I haven't had a chance to read it. There may be elements of youth development in their proposal, the Athens Land Trust proposal, that does align with the priorities of the market.
Okay, again, I'm asking you in terms of using the whole space. Is that just feeling like we have to speak for the entire place? We just can't say we're going to take responsibility.
I think it comes down to priorities, and if you want us to shrink down the vision in order to allow other priorities beyond the ones that we've articulated to be met, to actually be executed and accomplished, then I guess that's a perspective. We went into the development of our proposal with the idea that if we utilize the entire facility, we can truly serve the community well. We truly create a community school hub in a way that we're serving children in a very unique, in a very comprehensive way. And so that's the logic behind it. It comes down to, there's only so much you can do from a priority standpoint. And if that's our priority, then we need to execute our priority.
And it sounds like this is the work that you are asking to do, right? Is that you want to, obviously we can't plan the space on the fly here tonight. a long time. And it sounds like, Greg, this is like, sounds like he's asking to answer those questions. He's asking to sort of be able to dig in deep and get.
Because we didn't engage an architect. We didn't feel it was fair to the other community groups to engage an architect and to really put forth our vision. That if I were one of those community groups, that would have felt as if the park had already been put for divorce. We wanted to submit the proposal and make the entire community aware. We also have a vision. We also have an idea on how that facility can be used. And we also wanted to change the tenor of the discussion, because the discussion since I've arrived in July has been either that's a district office or not. It's either a district office or it's a garden. And what we want to propose to the board and the community, there's something else. There's another way that the district can use the space. It's clear that we haven't had the discussion of saying, if you have a district building, there are other ways you can serve your community. And if you're committed to a community school model, what a great opportunity we have in inserting those services in a vacant building in a community that needs help.
Thank you. And so what I would like to understand or to move us forward, because I do have a question. Yeah. So I'd like to move us forward to just look back at what our responsibilities are here. And as a board, we don't make a decision about how that building is going to be used until the recommendation process is there. So they would engage the architect to try all of this here, whatever the administration feels that they can actually accomplish there. I don't want us to sort of that, because that takes us back to, as a board, these are the things that we do, and then the administration does that they have. I'm really excited about bringing people back, put a proposal. I'm sorry that the district finding the need to put a proposal to do their job, but okay, it's done. So we have an opportunity to move forward and allow the district to take the learning and lead us to the next we need to. Because you're on the board, you're at that place of engagement, architect companies come together to articulate their visions, and then bring those back to us to vote on and say, yeah, we like this one. I'd like to say,
When you were mentioning building sort of the community, and just to reflect back on the most of it tonight for a brief period of time, we were studying, assisting with the career and technical piece with start help and tonight. Here is that.
We have not responded to that request. We haven't responded to that request, Ms. Williams, because we had proposals due today, and I did not want the school system to look as if we were siding with one proposal or another. If we would have said, yes, Mr. Payne, you can leverage and use that vacant facility for storage, some of the community would have taken that as an indication that we had a preference over one community group and their proposal over another. I think we can address that request now, but that's the reason why I have not responded.
So I thought that was very fun, very good time in mission. So even if something were very good, you could get time frame that sure.
I think that we all agree that this is a really slowly process and stressful and no clear-cut answer, which always makes everything tricky. But I think that at our March meeting, it would have been great if the district had said, hey, we want to use some of this space. We don't want to use all of it. How do y'all want to proceed with deciding how to use the rest of it? But instead, it was presented to the board as, we can't fit our district office over there, so now what? And so we had to stumble around as a board to figure out one, right? And I don't disagree with the process. I just wish that there had been, I wish that this proposal that we got tonight had started the conversation instead of showing it now, because I think that it would have been really helpful to have driven the conversation to say, oh, wait, we can use some of this space before. We can't use it for what we originally intended. It's not going to work for our whole district offices. But there's a use. The other community school building that's come into conversation a lot has been the old games building, and that has been a site that has been in conversation about creating community school, the health center, and all that sort of stuff, which is great. And I don't think doing one on the west side includes the ability to do one on the east side at all. I think that conversation can and should still be on the table. But all things aside, I think we're where we should be right now. And I do wish the process had gone a little bit smoother, and I do wish it had been in a little different order of operations. But I think right now what we have and what we know is that the district has an idea to benefit our children in that space directly, and then there's additional space potentially for other ways to benefit our children that may be in line with some of our community organizations. There are plenty of awesome, amazing people out there who are doing amazing things for our kids every single day, and I don't want to turn my back on them. And if there is a way that we can make sure that to incorporate as many, to prioritize and incorporate as many of them as we can, all in keeping with creating community schools, because I fully support that and stand behind it, and using the space. I like so much better that we're not talking about district office versus, we're not talking about offices versus soft, touchy-feeling, kindness, gardens, and things like that. We're talking about helping kids versus helping kids. And now that's what is all on the table. All these ideas to help kids, that makes me feel really good. And I really hope that, I look forward to seeing what the district comes back to us with the priority of ways that we can most benefit our kids. And it goes right in line with our strategic goals, and it goes right in line with our mission statement. It's right about equity and about creating a space to help all of our children. So while I wish the process had been done a little bit differently, I think we have a good packet of information here with lots of ideas for our children. And I look forward to it.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
This process has been very stressful, but I do think it's what's best for kids. I did vote whatever the years was that Mr. Word mentioned about. I think when information changes, people should have the ability to change their mind. So I've changed my mind. The facility will best serve the community, and that would be my top priority. The other thing, and I am going to vote no, and I'm not going to explain why, but I am going to vote no. But one thing I do want to put out there, we keep talking about the building and all of that, and that nice outline, the architectural piece with the little faces, everything is deteriorating. It's about gone. If we keep on dragging, we're going to lose a major piece of history because it is rotting away. Because we need to do something with that immediately to preserve it, because that is a major part of history. It's unique, and the longer this goes back and forth, that one piece, regardless of the talking about garden with the building, that one historical piece is going to be deteriorated. So I hope that I don't even know who makes, I'm so confused now. But I hope we will at least take care of that, because it does not feel as though this is moving the way it should be. I will also, I have to take the opportunity to say that I've gotten several calls from people. That's another reason I'm not going to this tonight. There's so much misinformation. There's so much misinformation. It isn't even misinformation, it's outright lies now. And I think we cloudy the board as the board. I think we do. But I just want to put it out there, not voting for the recommendation. I hope there is a plan to restore that peace. And I don't think like to leave it waiting until we drag this out. And it's-
Thank you. Really, yes.
Sorry, I was at the Classic City High School graduation. Could the motion be restated for those of us that just come?
Sure. There was a recommendation from the superintendent that the school district administration and staff be able to prepare a full proposal for the use of West Rock School. That was a motion by Mr. Worthy. The motion was from Brenda.
Second.
Yes, great discussion. I was going to drag you into it, whether you want to be in that. It's on the record now.
Could I ask clarity on the motion?
Sure.
This is coming from CCSB staff, that before we would get a proposal from the staff, correct?
Yes.
Does this include staff that supply them with the proposals?
It's the word was the staff differentiation. There's only one thing.
So there'd be overlap.
I think it's, from my understanding, and Dr. Meach, you can correct me, the recommendation from the superintendent is to take the beginnings of work that's been done, and take the proposals that have been submitted from other community groups and make something beautiful.
If they are in alignment with the priorities that we outlined, right, you know.
And so the staff that would be working on this, people that provided these proposals.
It would be district administration.
So, yes, so the answer is yes.
Yes.
Team CCSD. Yes.
I want, one thing is, I'm gonna also quote, and I'm gonna say that I know that we talked about the fact that this is for the kids. Okay? But there's a piece of this, and of course you can say everything, all the staff do were like for the kids. But also in the proposal coming from the district, there's including centralized and private location for disciplinary center, offices for directors of nursing, social, and behavioral support, office for the PDSD partnership. So there's an administrative wing component to this proposal, and that is what kind of I feel kind of pushback, because that wasn't, what I thought that the district was expressing interest in was more of a centralization, of school of district functions. And so I'm just kind of in a tizzy as to where this came from, and I feel uncomfortable just saying, okay, this came out of, in my opinion, nowhere. I do agree with the fact that we needed more space for early learning. But to me, we were talking maybe 6 classrooms, which would do us for years and years, from the numbers that we were given. But in an answer to what Linda said about, it's up to the administration, the district office to bring forth a proposal. I agree with that, but we have already had input. We spent 2-3 hours putting stickers on the board saying what was important to us about that property. And one thing that we were all unified was, in my opinion, we were unified, and maybe I'm wrong, was that there was going to be a strong community element to it. And just putting the word community in the proposal does not make a community, unless, in my opinion, a community facility is one that is available to the community, maybe on the weekends, maybe on a Sunday night. It's a place to have forums. It's a place that kids can go on Saturdays and work in the garden, or they can store their tools there, that we can have a culinary school there, there's a lot of things, and, that can be catering during the weekend. In other words, to me, a community center, is one that doesn't have an 8 to 5 schedule.
And I think, and I know it's not your intention to try to plan this thing.
No.
And then the way I understand what the district has put out, and Dr. Means, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is this is sort of very early draft number 1, and the idea is to look at other drafts of these and see what we can make happen. Like Ms. Ellis, I think it's been a difficult process to get to today and tonight, right? I think we have an incredibly capable superintendent and staff, and we have an incredibly dedicated community and a lot of input. There's been a lot of process beyond the sticky notes. We have good money for consultants to come in and plenty of community groups. This thing's been processed, and the request from the superintendent is to do the work to put these things together in a coherent way. And I think it's. And I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Means, but I read this as just sort of the initial, and you'd like to dig in much deeper and take all the work that's been put into this place and see what aligns with the district, all the sticky notes, and all the strategic plan, and to make it the best case for our children.
And also the district needs, we still don't have that report back, what our space needs are, what our departments are, so he is the author of that, he was the keeper of that, so I would think that Dr. Means is the best person to respond to this.
I would just say a few things. You remember, I think it was the March 27th meeting. If administration would have had an opportunity to engage, maybe the outline of this concept would have been, we would have had space to even share. If you remember, that was a board conversation. And that board conversation eventually led to a recommendation from the board to have a superintendent go out and get proposals from an FRI or a request for information. So I guess that's just really important for, because I don't want anyone to assume that where did this come from? This process has been clumsy. And I think everyone can attest to the fact that it's been a clumsy process. The concern I have is that in my role, I would hope that I have an opportunity to provide a recommendation to the Board of Education in regards to how to proceed with a vacant building that the school district owns. And I would hope that you would ask the superintendent to give thoughts and opinions and a proposal on how to best leverage that facility. And that's all this is. And that's all this is based on the way the process was constructed. If the process was constructed differently, we would have engaged differently. But I agree with Ms. Ellis, but we're here now. And so now what do we do now?
We certainly don't need to reenact.
Right, it's all, so I don't know that profits any of us to continue to go down that road of revisiting how the process has been clumsy. And frankly, I think the community, the board, say it's been a clumsy process for years. So it's just not even it's not even this time frame that we're discussing now. That being said, we have an opportunity here, and we have outlined what I believe can be beneficial to the community, which then puts us into a position of, so what about the garden? So then it comes down to what about the garden? And I hope that that's not the conversation. I hope the conversation is how can we find ways to partner with one another? And that's why those priorities are outlined in proposal.
Yes, we have a few more comments. Please, Ms. Williams.
I just want to point out, and again, I know this has been an intense conversation over the last couple of years. void of administration, and I'm not correcting Mr. G, is having the building and constructing that can sit there and deteriorate, the way it is deteriorated, and no recommendation that since I've been on this board, and maintenance of that facility, and we have community groups that stepped in, thank you, to do something in there to maintain some part of the integrity of the building. And I don't think we would be in this situation tonight if our eyes and ears and sight had been more on taking care of our facilities that we have and not just concentrating on anything else.
Yes.
I'm still gonna go there, but even just glancing at, okay, this is the Northeast Georgia Business Line. When I look at that one, and I glance at,
And we're not gonna dive into either.
no, but I'm telling you why I'm not voting, because I know it's gonna get wrong. I see a collaboration there. I see opportunities there. I see what we've been talking about. The one that we asked out is totally. So even if we want community input, or we don't, and we shouldn't waste people's time if we're not come up with something. I'm willing, very willing for Dr. News to take this and try to put it together. That's what I'm not voting. I'm not voting against that. I'm just voting against how this process has kind of sprung us. And that's the only.
Well, but the motion is to allow Dr. Means to go, and that's fine, I just want to clarify what the motion is. And then further to that, whatever date, which is action item number 3 on our agenda, whatever date we all decide on, that is when an actual proposal comes forward. So the proposal comes forward that doesn't need any of this conversation, and just completely ignores the community altogether. That's another opportunity that we have where we're like, wait a minute, this isn't what we said, or what we decided, or what you said, or whatever. So this, all this
Okay.
is just.
Let's do this. Please do not try to correct me when I just make a statement of where I'm coming from. I get it.
I just wanted to clarify.
Well, it sounded like you were directing it to me, and I'm saying that I'm a little stressed about this. I'm just giving you my explanation. You don't have to explain it to me. I'm telling you why I don't. And I was agreeing with you a little bit, okay? So let's just move forward. I mean, because you do not get the calls I get, Sarah.
Well, I think there is more agreement there. Yeah, absolutely more agreement there than conflict. But I think we need to vote on the motion that's before us and move on down the agenda. All right.
Yes.
So there's a motion that the district administration take back proposals and come up with a plan to be submitted to us.
That's not exactly what the motion was.
The motion is for the district administration to prepare a plan for the use of West Coast.
In conjunction with number 2 on the agenda. Right.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion not passed.
I would like to put forth an alternative motion. What I would like to suggest is, and steal my hands, but I would like to see the 3 entities that put forth various proposals tonight to actually sit down together and to at least summarize what they have in common and what they don't have. No, you don't understand.
I mean, I just don't get it. I don't understand.
Well, because you weren't listening and
We're not going to be disrespectful. But if you have a motion
That was my motion. Okay, because that's different from asking the district office to look how the other two proposals that were submitted fit into the proposal that was done by the district. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I heard Dr. Means said, saying we have a proposal from the district. The other two proposals, the district office has not had a chance to review them to see if there is any consistency there that they can incorporate into the district plan. That's what I heard, and if I'm wrong, then I wasn't.
What's your motion?
Okay, so my motion is for the three entities who made these proposals to sit in the room and look at what they have in common, what the differences are, and to basically see if we can have a consensus from the community, also includes the school district, to come up with some type of common community use of that property. I don't know how it helps to go forward except by that.
Can I make it, and then I would suggest, this is not a motion, I would suggest that we take no action on number 2 tonight. We can take an action on number 3, we can decide, we can let this stew for a little bit, we can come back together. And rather than having this conversation on the fly, which is rather difficult, stressful, and clumsy, get ourselves in an awkward situation. I would suggest that we,
Yes, I guess we're there.
yes, we are.
We're as awkward as it's going to be in public. And so, I guess what I would say is this. And I think I need the entire board. I need the entire board to hear me. I never thought that I would be at this point in my tenure having to say this. But if you hire me to serve as the superintendent of schools, then please allow me to do the job. And by asking the district to sit down with other community groups to determine how we're going to use district space just seems, it is not how districts function. Now, if that's how you want me to address this job and to do the work, that's very different from how we engaged when you said, please come to Clarke County and serve as the superintendent. And so that's where I'm struggling. And yes, we all acknowledge that the process has been clumsy the last few months. It's been a clumsy few years of this process. And I think we've tried to be respectful of community groups who stepped in and tried to preserve a piece of history that should have been preserved. And that should be honored. But we're at a tipping point. And I feel like we're at a tipping point. That if I'm unable to do the work that you've asked me to do, and this is part of it, and this is actually not the hard part of the work. But if I can't use this work, then you are diminishing the role of the superintendent in Clarke.
Mr. President,
Thank you.
I need to make one statement. It is the responsibility of the superintendent and the Board of Education when it comes to making decisions in terms of what we're going to do with the school district property. But the superintendent and the 9 board members can take action on that. No one else should be involved in that. That's the law.
I would like to move down the agenda.
Mr. Bobby, I agree with Ms. Ellis. I think this is uncomfortable. It's not, I don't think anyone here or in the audience feels good about how this conversation is unfolding. But if we continue to say that the community wants an answer, then I think we need to continue to talk. Let's continue the conversation. Let's at least continue the dialogue to see if we can move this forward. Because there are a lot of people who are looking direction and next steps.
I think it's been stalemate out, we see June 14th. We're stalemate out now. What in the world? What is next? We've been sitting on our hands on this thing forever, and we're having this discussion for 3 years, off and on, continuously, I know. But it's time to make an action. Get a proposal together, just go back 3 years ago, where this all fell apart, as an administration had architects draw the whole plan and had no input from anyone, right? So here we are, fast forward 3 years, we've got input from all kinds of people, and now administration, please draw the plan with the input that we've got. And it's time to move forward. And Carol's right, we should be mortified that a building is sitting like that in that condition on the main artery in our town. It's embarrassing. It's time to do something. It's time to move forward.
I would like to say, I just wanted to explain my vote. I heard things the way Greg heard them in terms of having 3 proposals coming together, but going to a group that had also, or people that had also proposed something. And so I looked at the 3 proposals and I saw one that stood out beyond the rest by a wide margin and had community support. And so I felt like we had a way forward that I think dispassionately speaking, looking at the proposals we were
And I think I don't see these as sort of 3. These are what the district has prepared for us. And we get these all brand new. We've got these new today, right? So it is. I think I see it a little bit different. That's one thing. But I'd love to hear from other people who are uncomfortable with the motion that we had. And if we can get to a motion that is workable to majority of the board, then I'd be happy to do that.
I would like us to do it right and legal and appropriate and also respectful of the office of superintendent of schools. And that is to give this back to the superintendent.
I think I made it clear from the initial point that I am not going to support any of these proposals. 5 board members did what they should have done. Had it been recommended by the superintendent, I would have been the first one to say, I'm not going to ever raise my hand for something that is unlawfully done.
Our attorney was in that meeting.
No,
He's asking to give he's asking for space to give a recommendation now. Our superintendent is.
So I would encourage anybody to just, I don't know how else to say it. I want us to not put a letter out in public declaring our support for superintendent and then second guess him every time he has a decision to make. This is his decision, managing the properties, making recommendations, frequenting schools. Nobody's complaining about, oh, well, that's not along beautifully. The superintendent did that with this same process that he did to do Barnett shows with Davis and all the rest of the schools. West Rock property is no different. And since I've been on this board for these 5 years, that one vote that came after I came on the board, by the way, to allow that someone to use the land temporarily, it was always a temporary situation. And now that it has become, it's almost like a lightning bolt, so that we can move forward because of the decision that we made while we're waiting to get to this building on schedule. It has always been the plan from the time I've been on board to renovate and restore the West Rock building with the input from the same heritage community that have input on this. The West Rock architectural proposal that was that I ran into, had that input from the community. It may not be the community group that wanted to have input, but there was a community group that was convened in that architectural plan. So far, we haven't done anything wrong in terms of how it has worked. And it's the same situation where we don't always get the right people involved or enough people involved. But I thought that this request for information, the good thing that came out of that is you do have input now from the community. How Dr. Means decides to do this for that West Rock facility has to be his call. If this were a school that had a principal in it, that principal would convene a community group. That community group would be the deciders on, how the buildings are going to go, what doors you go in. That's the group that would give the input. West Rock has no such community. And so he called to, before the architect was engaged, he went to the Heritage Committee that gave the input on this historic building. And so again, so far processes have been followed. The only thing that we giving the superintendent the go-ahead to continue the plan for wherever he wants to go. He can invite whoever he wants. That's his comp. But it is his comp. We hired him to do this work. We need to allow him to do that work.
And I think he sort of, is right guy. He hears loud and clear, from the board, our priorities. We did sticky notes that sort of talked about a lot of those things. He hears loud and clear. Some very articulate and passionate members of our community who have been contributors to the schools for a very long time. And so I also think it's important to give that ability to do the work.
Because, again, whatever day we decide to come back together, the proposal isn't in line with our conversations and with the process that we have requested through our conversations tonight. And I think at that point, we can have a different discussion, but to stop right here, right now, and not be able to come together and move in a forward progress direction and put it back into the district's hands to come up with a plan for the district's building based on the proposals here at hand. We're disserving our community and our kids, and we spend far too much time on this. It's time to
Already, yes. But, unless any votes change, it's in place.
All right, well, I'm gonna make another motion and try again. I would like to make a motion that the Board of Education, that Dr. Means and the district review the proposals that we have been given to come up with a plan to be presented at a date decided on next. That is in line with our discussions tonight with district needs and community requests.
Is there a second to the motion? Thank you.
Mr. Bevy, just procedurally, I don't know if Mr. Davis's motion or okay, you didn't get a second. Okay, I just
Thank you. Do you have any thoughts? There's been a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? We are.
What is an event of a tie? I don't know Robert's rules of order.
Move on. That's what happens with the board's presentation. You gotta leave it.
I think we can advance the agenda.
Yes.
If we can,
Charlie.
Can I make that closing remark?
no, let's move on to the agenda. The next item, I think we can agree on this. We can figure out a date to talk about this again. I think we have meetings scheduled May 31st, June 7th, and June 14th. I think the sooner we try again, the better.
What are we trying to do? Mr. Bevy, I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I think we just have to ask the question. Okay, will it be a repeat of tonight?
This will be,
won't be a repeat of tonight, because that will not be here on the 31st.
try to expect everyone there, whatever we decide. I think we will, as all these things are brand new, I think we will have a chance to read, digest, and sit and think and ponder and have conversations and hopefully we can get some consensus around whether we understand the exact same motion again and come up with a different place, or whether we understand a different motion.
I would like to, I will say, and I won't be here, that's clear. But that means you did say you didn't want to read the other proposals. So maybe by then, there might be a something. But I won't be here on the 31st. That would make it a possibility of something.
Is there a? Yes.
Well, of course, I'm gonna.
Sorry. If I can interrupt you real quick, Dr. Means, do you have any recommendation for this action item in terms of a date to discuss and deliberate the West Broad RFI proposal?
What are you in the story? I think by the presence we have here this evening, people in the community would like to have a response sooner or later. I would recommend we dig in and try to get on the 31st. I would be remiss if I did not say publicly, I'm concerned. So, thank you. And I have to just extend that. I'm concerned because this goes beyond the vetting of a proposal. It goes to the essence of the work that you asked the superintendent to do. It is extremely, and I know it's been uncomfortable for the board to have this conversation. It's extremely uncomfortable for me to have this discussion in public less than a year into the job. But that's where this is right now. I'm concerned. I'm concerned that the process, as we've articulated here, has been clumsy. And I think part of the clumsiness of the process was that the role of the superintendent was, it was not engaged. And I think that's why some board members feel that the proposal that we presented this evening is catching them off guard. We were equally caught off guard that we weren't engaged. And so, and what I mean by engaged is there's typically a point where there's a pivot, where a board will say, so what are your recommendations? What direction do you want us to move in? What should we be thinking about? The March 27th meeting did not, and again, I don't mean to replay this, that's not how it unfolded. In fact, it unfolded at the end of the meeting where the board provided direction to me to submit a request for information for a building that we already own. Typically, what would have typically in a normal situation, the board would have pivoted to the superintendent and said, so do you have other ideas other than a district office? And at that point, I would have said, well, maybe give us some time to get together as a team and think about it, and we can come back and give you some recommendations. That there was never a space for that discussion.
And what I appreciate that. I definitely don't want, and I know nobody here wants to sort of rehash the clumsiness in meetings past, but because I think we come from different memories, different areas about what we've done. Specifically, this idea of a date to discuss and deliver West Broad RFI proposals is where I'd like to get the conversation to. Yes, Dr.
Ma'am. Since this is on the table, I just want to ask something I never understood. Why was the superintendent told to back away from this and not be a part of that on March 27th? That was never explained to me, and that was a surprise to me when I heard that on March 27th. Could you explain that, Dr. Hughes?
I don't think that's fruitful there. I don't think it's fruitful. That's my opinion, but if Dr. Means disagrees, that would be okay. Because it doesn't get us anywhere. It doesn't get us further down the agenda.
That was a problem. Well, I can't respond to exactly what you said, Dr. Knox, but I have said to this board before with the previous administration, you gotta follow the law. You go to policy BH, you go to board governance, that's domain 1, and you go down to item 4, okay? You cannot have a board meeting without a superintendent. You cannot vote on something unless the superintendent recommends it.
We have been in line with the law all the way along.
Not what about March 22nd? No, you are not.
Sorry, Dr. Knox, maybe you want to interrupt, but Dr. Means, if you'd like to address Dr. Knox's question, please, by all means.
Sure. I think there was a belief among some board members that now, in essence, it's really ironic to say. It's really ironic to say there was a belief among some board members that this is such a controversial issue that it may be best for the superintendent not to be in the middle of the decision, and that maybe it would be best if this very contentious issue could be handled without the superintendent being in the middle of it, and eventually having to be the arbiter of a decision. And so I think it came from a good place. I say it's ironic because we're right in the middle of it now anyway. Thank you.
And I'm going to say, if this board does things for good intentions, but it comes out wrong, you got to tell us that.
It's wrong, business
I
wrong.
mean, that's what I'm saying. And you got to tell us that. And we need it, and that's what it's and I say that because I have worked really hard not to get into the day-to-day micromanagement stuff. Everything that I've tried to do is because I was on a committee or had some input somewhere else. But we all are learning, and this is all new and everything. And I still say that you do have a role when we're getting a little off track to bring it to our attention. You may not even want to do it publicly. You do if something. If that advice was wrong, because you and I talked before, and that's the part that people don't know. I've talked to you privately just to get your opinion about stuff. So I feel a little bit older right now because we've had these conversations. But no, we're all about this.
I'm not gonna go back to March 7th, but Dr. Means going back to May 31st, we still may have a problem because right now here, we only gonna have, I guess, 6 board members there. The store said she would not be there. I know Mr. Davis gonna be there, and obviously Mr. Payne gonna be there. So you gonna have 6 board members, so you may be in the same situation. I think that if we look at June 7th, and of course, there's a whole bunch we gotta do on June 7th, and maybe the regular board meeting on June 14th would be better dates.
And I can say that I have to correct it. What happened on June 7th. This pass it back to the person who had it, who had the responsibility in the beginning. To simply pass back to Dr. Mills and let him do his job. There is all of this one.
We are at action item number 3. Will we approve a date to discuss and deliberate these proposals?
So the May 31st meeting you have on your docket to, is an opportunity for the board to ask questions about the budget. And there will also be a presentation on our recommendation for English curriculum adoption. So those are the 2 items that's on that agenda. You have time, the 31st, to dig into this conversation again. Excuse me?
You have time to look at these proposals. And we don't have time to look at them.
Is there a motion?
What you just recommended? What you just recommended?
Yes.
I think do whatever that we just said. Make the remake to be made the 31st.
Please discuss May 31st. I meant to the agenda for a meeting on May 31st. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Dr. Knox.
But I mean, start. So on behalf of the community, and just go check it out for your consideration. If you're going to discuss this on the 31st, that gives us ample time to review proposals, bring back to you again a consolidated proposal, and have you act within. You have 3 more meetings scheduled before you take your summer break. I think the community needs an answer. And so what I would respectfully suggest is if you would please think about it, have your decision made in regards to looking at a proposal by the 31st, but either the 7th or the 14th, make a decision one way or another so people know what's happening.
We have a motion to discuss and deliberate these proposals on May 31st. That is your agenda for May 31st meeting. Just in a second. Yes, we will. All we can keep on discussing it all that long.
No, I think my discussion is that, you know, as I've told the board and told the superintendent, I know I won't be in the state. And so if there is a decision made, then I would feel a little bit excluded.
I think you're allowed one meeting a year.
That's not the concern. The concern is that if it's just gonna be a presentation, I can get the presentation later. If it's gonna be a vote.
You're allowed one meeting a year, I believe, to teleconference in. Right?
That's just not, I'm gonna be in like 3 different time zones and.
Okay, well, I didn't say that. Not being in the state these days, definitely not.
Any other, discussions?
So is that where the vote's gonna take place? Is that what you're proposing, Mr. President?
I think this is the next discussion and deliberation of these proposals.
So it's not gonna be a vote that night? Proposal?
That's not, the motion is. Any other comments, concerns, Mr. Sullivan? All in favor? Opposed? And abstentions?
I vote for it, as long as you can vote.
Yes. Motion carries, thank you. We will revisit this on the 31st. We are down to action item number 4, charter system discussion and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Bybee, board members, audience. I have a few comments to make, and then hopefully I would like to invite a guest speaker to address the board, and then from there have a discussion. And so let me start by saying one of the things that excited me about being in Clarke County, the many things that excited me about being in Clarke County is that there were local school governance teams collaborating with our schools to make our district a better place. And I understand clearly that the charter system governance model is a way for that collaboration to flourish. I was excited about the charter system in this school district because I believe we can leverage our collective interests of creating community schools and wraparound services for children through the charter. Functioning as a charter system is a significant shift from a traditional governance model. And when you look at other charter systems, they've had very similar struggles with trying to figure out whose role, who's going to fulfill a role and who does what. It's normal. It's a normal process. If you remember last week when we presented to the board around our rigorous curriculum unit design, we talked about the fact that in a continuous improvement model, you should have a plan to study and adjust cycle in place. I think we get a lot of planning for the charter system. We have been in it now. This is our 2nd year in the charter system. I think it's time to study it and adjust. And so this is a natural model and an adjustment for a school community. It's clear that we need to make some adjustments. We've heard from the community, but candidly, there are components of this work that has been vague in terms of whose role is what and who should communicate to whom and when, how. It hasn't been proven. I think we can get better at it over time. I want to emphasize again that the kind of questions and discussions that are opening up in our community right now, they happen in other charter systems. It's natural, it's healthy. If we're all focused on ensuring that we're going to make this a stronger system for students. I think there's several opportunities for in all of the players, all of the different people who are involved in this work. That's why we've engaged in some professional development for local school governance teams and principals during the days of June 12th, 13th, and 14th. I think we need to clarify the roles of the local school governance teams, the principal, the superintendent, board of education, and I think that's going to take some time for discussion. In my homework and talking to other people involved with charter systems, one of the main things that continue to come up is that the role of the building principal changes significantly in a charter system and with local school governance teams. Russ Cook was a former superintendent in the state of Georgia and was involved with many of the trainings here. He used the term that you're a pseudo superintendent, that the role that the superintendent plays with an elected board of education is the same role that a principal plays with an LSGT. And so that level of communication, the transparency, keeping that group updated is really, that's a shift for some principals. And so we need to acknowledge that and understand that that's work that we need to continue to focus on. In regards to the questions that board members pose around compliance, the word compliance is really a rare term to think about a charter contract. It doesn't really, in talking with people throughout the state, the word compliance hasn't come up a lot. There was a question from the board in regards to, are we meeting the goals of Appendix A of the charter contract? We established our baseline data during the 2016-17 school year. This year, 17-18 school year, is the first year that we'll see if data is matching our goals. We won't have all that information in November. And so we won't know if we are meeting those goals until then. I think the more accurate question that we should ask ourselves is, do we believe that we're in a position to achieve the goals outlined in goal or in A? When I look at other contracts across the state, the goals are fairly boilerplate for Appendix A. So you can look to any of the 45 charter systems in the state, they all have similar goals. And they're rigorous goals. They're tough goals. I don't know if beating the odds, I gave that information to the board. About half of our schools are beating the odds, the other half are not beating the odds. And that's a main component to the work. There's also an element that we need to all be aware of, which is the CCRPI index has changed. And so how that's going to impact our ability to meet the goals will be interesting to watch. Right now, we do have a definitive answer about what we need to do, in my opinion, and that is, we need time to step back and determine what we want in our charter and what's going to work, what's aligning to our collective school district vision, and what isn't going to work for us. I think it's important to know that the title of the charter system model is a charter system. And I think there's been a misconception that if we are a charter system, then certain schools get to act as independent charters. That's not the case. We're all still part of a system, a school system. There's a lot of flexibility, however, with the local school governance teams. Let me give you an example. I just received word from one of our elementary school principals just this week of the principal saying that they wanted to shift how they were going to use their staffing and do an allocation from what was initially provided to them
and shift it to some other place. So in other words, they were taking a classroom teacher out of their allotment for a certain grade level, and they were going to use that FTE and make it a specialist teacher instead. And it was going to increase their class size a little bit, but that was a decision that principal talked to her LSG team to say, this is what we want to do in our school. That's powerful. That's the work that should happen at the school level. And it's important for that work to happen because when that principal and the LGT has to explain to their school community the class size has gone up, that's a local school decision that was made. I had a call this week from a middle school principal who said, I think I want 2 assistant principals, not 1. And so how can I leverage my existing staffing to make that happen? My response was, go to your local school governance team and make that decision. Those are hard decisions to make. But when you are able to bring in your local school governance team on the front end, that's local. That's a local decision that should be made and allow those leaders to make the decision. We have reached out to a lot of different leaders and consultants in the world of the charter system, and they all emphasize that there's still a role for system level leadership, and that system level leadership should not be diminished. It shouldn't be diminished. It's just a matter of how it's communicated and how that interaction happens, and how the communication flows to LSGTs in terms of input and knowledge of things. So I want to pause here and invite Mr. Dan Weber to come to the podium. I don't know. Maybe I can share the microphone. Dan was one of the authors of the legislation that created the charter system here in Georgia, and has a wealth of knowledge, and we spent some time talking this week. And it was Dan who kind of put my mind at ease to say that when he said, what Clarke County is going through right now in terms of trying to figure out whose role, who's going to fulfill what role, is something that happens across the state. And that's a natural thing to have happen. So, board members, community, Dan Weber. He's our executive director of our charter foundation here in the state of Georgia, and provides amazing support to charter systems all across Georgia.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. Mr. President, members of the board, I appreciate this opportunity to come and share thoughts with you and introduce who we are. And my name is Dan Weber. I live in Clarke County. I'm an attorney by profession, so I do a lot of that and more, except on the charter systems, procedures, and guidance. My wife is a long-time educator, dad, 22 years, math teacher, middle school principal at first middle school charter conversion back in 2002, where she had her role changed much like I also served in the Georgia State Senate for 6 years. During that time, I was there in 2007 when we passed the Charter System Act. I was the author of that legislation, working with Lieutenant Governor. Ms. Williams and I have known each other throughout that span of time as a firm on the state level. In the beginning, in 2008, we had 3 charter systems. Today, we have 45. We just added 2 new systems who converted from strategic waiver to charter system. It is a very powerful model that can pay huge dividends for your system. And my sense is that Clarke County is poised. You're on the cusp to do some really good things. And I told Dr. Mead, we at the foundation have seen this before, particularly when there's a new superintendent who comes in your case, Dr. Lindu left at a very inopportune time because for a brand new charter system. I spent time with him here in this building a couple of years ago. He had a powerful vision. I think Dr. Leeds has a powerful vision with the concept of community schools, community hub. And I commend all of you for sitting here tonight and trying to hash out what is best for this community. These unused spaces, and sounds like that space is a much beloved historic space in this community. And it's not easy work, you know, to support. And I also sense that here in Clarke County, you have a problem that is sort of reversed from what a lot of districts have. My sense is that you have community members who really want to be engaged. There's a lot of really smart people who really want that. That could be a challenge too. We have districts around the state who have the opposite problem, where they have trouble getting community members to the table. So in that sense, I think we can count your blessings that you have all these resources. If you can harness that through these school governance teams, which really is a shared governance model. You're not turning over control of the schools to the school governance. And the school board, your role still is the Constitution. You're the final say on anything that happens. It really falls to the superintendent to share governance. When those governance teams make a decision, it's not a final decision. It really becomes more like a recommendation to the superintendent. And I think Dr. Meach just gave two excellent examples of that, where the principals called and said, we want to use our personnel in a different, more effective way. What do you think about it? Proper response, I think, is exactly what Dr. Means did. Talk to your school governance team, make sure they're on board, and come back to me. We can talk. Superintendent retains the authority to say, no, I'm not going to support it. But if he does support it, then it becomes a joint recommendation to the school board and your school governance team. The school governance team needs to know that it has the support of the school board and the superintendent in making those recommendations, those decisions. And it can be very powerful. It also takes time to change the model. For a new superintendent, it takes about a year. And I sense Dr. Meach is now at that point where he's starting to lay out his vision for you. Start to get an understanding of this model. So I think probably have a lot of resources in this community that can be leveraged through your school governance team to bring community members to the table, and they know that they're going to have an opportunity to really have a say, make recommendations. A little bit about the foundation itself. We've been in existence as a nonprofit for about 4 years now. When I was in the state senate, I was the chair of the education committee. I always thought that our school districts around the state, 180 of them, didn't really share ideas with each other. There was no conduit for sharing ideas. And at that time, 4 or 5 years ago, we had 16 charter systems. And we met with the superintendents and proposed the idea of forming a nonprofit that would serve as a conduit for sharing ideas. And all 16 superintendents liked the idea, and that's when this nonprofit was formed. We have 2 employees. I'm the executive director. PM Talmadge is our executive assistant. Our function is to support charter systems. We do that through workshops, training, and advocacy. We have 3 consultants who work with us, all 3 of whom are former superintendents of very successful charter systems. Sherry Getty Sherman, you may know, she lives here in Clarke County, but she travels the state conferring with charter systems, as does Dr. Lynn Plunkett, former superintendent of Wake County. Sherry and Lynn split up the charter systems around the state to consult with them. Clarke County calls it Sherry. And they do that under contract with the Georgia Department of Education, but those contracts are now going to come under the Charter System Foundation in the upcoming year. Because Sherry and Len also do workshops for us to recommend recommendations. We do about 6 or 7 workshops throughout the year to talk with superintendents. Local board members can come to our workshops and you'll get credit for your annual requirement. And to talk about how you use flexibility. How does this new governance model work? You hear other experiences from other charters. Recently, we have asked Dr. Emily Lembeck, retired recently from Marietta City Schools, to work as our consultant. She is now doing that. Her goal will be to consult with the new superintendents, adjust to and learn the charts. So I know that she is looking for like needs. She's going to be reaching out to about a half dozen other new superintendents around the state. We are funded by voluntary contributions from charter systems. And I want to thank you for being a member. You do contribute to the foundation. We really appreciate that. We also have a contract with the Georgia Department of Education. They provide us funding each year to help subsidize the training and the workshops with our retired superintendents. Last year, for the first time, I'll just tell you, we had our first annual fall conference here in town. I know the Clarke County, Dr. Reeves was there as a welcome everybody. We had about 165 people there. Clarke County was well represented. And we're going to be doing that every year. This year, we're going to expand it to a day and a half, rather than 1 day. It'll be on October 2 and 3. And I would invite you to come to that conference. Really a great opportunity here for other charter systems around the state. I think we have about 30 charter systems there representing. So keep an eye out for that. So we, among other things, in addition to being your advocates for policymakers, the General Assembly, Georgia DOE, we answer questions. If you have any questions, please send them to us. It can be questions about governance, questions how you use flexibility, if you have a technical or legal question, we can answer. We have the resources and we're there to support.
And there will be a Q&A soon, and I'm sure we may call you, so thank you. It's just a few last points, and then we'd love to hear any questions from the board. I've engaged our legal counsel to give some insight on our contract. This is the most important contract we have as a school system, and the council we have received is we need to step back and take a look at the language and clarify things. I think one of the most important components to the clarification component is that becoming a charter system allows us to waive all of the regulations under Title 20, which governs schools in Georgia. But if you waive those regulations, there still has to be some type of framework that you are identifying as a school system. We're waiving it, and so as a result of waiving it, this is how we operate in Clarke County. I think as a board, you ran into that a little bit with the GDN policy, because it's not enough to say we're a charter system, so we get to waive everything. You still have to do the hard work of constructing a framework for what if you are waiving things, then how are you going to operate? That makes the development of policy that much more important in the school system. And so I think that's very important. In talking with Dan and Sherry and Dr. Lembeck and others, and reading contracts, it's important that I think it's important for us to have a consistent communication loop that hasn't been in place. And I think that communication loop starts with the district office to representatives of the LSGT, and then frankly, it happens
at the school level with the LSGT as well. I know Mr. Davis asked a question in regards to, so a lot of these questions emerge with the conversation around implementing the Avid system in the district. I think that's probably the most ironic component. There's a lot of irony tonight. That's one of the most ironic components to all of this, in that there was independent and true decision making provided to each school in deciding that they were going to engage in that system or not. There were some schools that said, no, we're not there. We're not ready to engage. There were other schools who decided that they were going to engage. And in fact, we had at least 2 schools who went to their LSGTs and leveraged their grant dollars to send more teachers to the Avid Summer Institute training. And so in some schools, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of conversation. And so it didn't catch anyone off guard. And in other places, it did catch people off guard. And so I think what we can do as a school district is support schools and making sure that that conversation happens. And in talking with James Barlowman and Russ Cook, I think we were just in the throes of training through the 2016-2017 school year. And so the LSGTs were together more, and there was more direction in terms of where we were trying to move those groups. This school year, the training ended around October, November. There was really, I would say from December on, there wasn't a consistent coming together as a group to decide. So now what do we talk about with the groups? It was the first semester in which the principals and the LSGTs lived with one another and had to kind of figure out, so how do we function with one another? And when you combine that with the fact that you have a new superintendent and there's new things happening, I think it was a recipe for us to have a time to regroup and to look at how we can move forward. I believe that with this legal opinion, it's clear that we need to step back and look at our contract. I think it's critical for us to have and I talked to Dan about this when I attended the conference in the fall. The thing that struck me was that the school systems in Georgia that were charter systems that were really successful were the ones who had a very focused approach to their charter in terms of what they were trying to accomplish. And when you look at our charter, we're trying to do a lot of different things. If you look at our essential and innovative features, there's a lot of different things under that feature that makes it almost too broad in terms of what we're trying to accomplish. I'll end by saying this. I think the misconceptions of what people believe a charter system is has been running rampant, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it. The history of charter systems, not only in the state of Georgia, but one prime example of the community school / school governance team roles and responsibilities being clear and having to need some time to figure it out is in the Chicago Public Schools. The Chicago Public Schools went to a school governance team model, and it took them almost a decade to kind of figure out, so what does the school governance team do? What does the principal do? What's the role of the board? This is natural. I would say that no one should put any or subscribe any intentions to anyone. I think it's just a natural, we're trying to figure out what does this new governance model look like. We're committed to it. I'm excited about it. What I'm excited about it is that we have a chance to answer your questions, because candidly, I don't know if you had a chance to ask questions as a board and clarify the work. I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Keep in mind the timeline, and I'll stop with this one. Keep in mind the timeline that you had when the charter was signed. The charter was signed in June of 2016. My predecessor announced his departure from the district in the fall of 2016. By January 2017, you had an interim in place. I think from a leadership perspective, from a governance standpoint at the district level, there hasn't been any conversation about what's the role of the board, what's the role of the superintendent, and how does this all work. And so again, I think this is natural, it's healthy, it's good, because I know that, and I really appreciate Dan's statement. Everyone has good intentions. Everyone wants the right thing. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do it. So my recommendation, Mr. President, board members, is that administration have an opportunity to work with our legal counsel to clarify the areas that we believe needs to be addressed within the charter.
Thank you for that. I want to put my colleagues on the board for some questions and conversation around.
But if any recommendation, let's go on that first.
Yes, Ms. Thornton. Thank you. Ms. Ellis. Thank you for that. Yes.
Yes, the process, and either you can answer that. What is the process when you want to change a charter? Does it go back to the DOA for that and tell them to send it?
Yes, go back to the DOE and change the charters. They're very cooperative in doing this. If I may just make some suggestions about putting some structure to your, when you waive all of the policies and laws, that's a new position to be in. We're so accustomed in education to be so compliance oriented. Tell us the black and white rule, and we'll follow it and comply with it. And that's the federal level, state level, and down. All the counties that are charter systems and cities that are charter systems have gone through this. One that I held out as an exemplar document is Doherty County, which is Albany, a similar sized district. And the approach they took with flexibility is they had a session, administration and board and some work together. Let's look at every state regulation that's out there. And one by one, we're going to discuss it and decide whether we want to keep it as our own local policy for the board or whether we're going to waive it. If we're going to waive it, how we want to do it. I think that's a very structured, intelligent way to do that.
Can I just follow up on that question? It's very intriguing to me because once you change policy, it's in waivers. And if your charter ends and you elect not to be a charter system again, what do you do? Do you go back to the policy changes to make it on the state?
So that depends on whether you can choose to be a status quo condition system, in which case you can then be subject to all the rules under Title 20, again, class size and so on. And there are only 2 districts that have opted for that. Or you could move to being a strategic waiver system, where you would designate which laws you want. But you already have the ability to do that as a charter system. You can opt for the flexibility.
Just for clarity on this motion, it is not more specific than going back and coming with a recommendation because we received a draft document that had more specificity to it, but we're not voting on those specifics at this time.
No, sir, and I think those, as I've continued to talk to people like Dan and others, I think that's premature. Right now, I think legally we should really fine tune what we're trying to do first. Yes, Mr. Davis.
Yes, one thing I can mean is that when I was, looking at, reading the charter, and then going back to some of the trainings, it seemed to be a disconnect. I don't know if you were able to do that or because, I specifically focused on curriculum charter, had, curriculum development as a district office function. But the presentation of it was confusing to me, and I'm just not sure. Do you know where the presentations came from? Is there something that we generated locally, or did they come statewide, or what?
They were actually developed by James Garland, Russ Cook, and our friends at the Carl Vinson Institute. And in talking with Sherry Gibney Sherman, they were so good that they have been used at the state level.
Really?
Yes, sir. So, I thought your question was going to go in a different direction.
Yeah, no, it was the opposite, I think. But
yes, because I've had some board members make the statement that Boyd's local school governance teams are getting so much knowledge and information that we don't receive.
right.
When do we get the same professional development that the LSGTs are getting? But to answer your question directly, Mr. Davis, and I don't want to, he's in the audience of this evening, but in talking with both Dr. Cook and James Garland, there was a lot of clarity around the roles and responsibilities. I think, and I'm speaking for James, but I think we've talked enough about this where I know where it stands. I think there have been people who have weighed in on this topic that were not part of those trainings. There were, I think, the misconception of what the authority of local school governance teams are in comparison to the board has been, it's confusing. And I think that's been part of the disconnect that's been happening in our community right now.
Okay, if I can just have a follow-up. But one thing that confused me was that when in the LSGT training curriculum, it says one of the factors that the LSGT to take into consideration is community support identified consequences, which is, they explained it in terms of how it impacted grades in other schools. I think that would be way beyond an LSGT to select a curriculum with different grade levels in mind, as well as other schools. And so that, unless I totally misread that, but
no, I don't think you did misread it, and I think that's where Dr. Lembeck and I had a really healthy conversation. And may I add, I think it's been really healthy to have close subs now in our district, which has been part of these conversations as well. I'm really looking forward to the LSGTs and the charter system being strong, because this is where a principal can be very creative. And Dan and I talked about this in our conversations this week. If there's a building principal and a LSGT, let's just say they want to become a Montessori school. Under a charter system, they have the ability to explore what that looks like and what it can mean for their school. I would love that opportunity to engage with a school community that wants to go in that direction if they feel that it's going to strengthen their construction around literacy, numeracy, and social emotional growth. But that vision that the board and I have constructed is the framework in which LSGTs function within. An LSGT doesn't have the authority to kind of go outside of that space. It always has to come back to how are we helping the students learn and grow. And that has to be the focus of it. Another component is really interesting, and that is a school, and this has happened in Georgia. A school may say, we want to start, a high school may say, we want to start later. We want to start at noon. And we'll go from noon to 6 with students, and that'll be our school day. That's okay to have that conversation, but it's equally okay for the district to say, that's going to force us to incur more costs as a result of transportation. Therefore, we keep moving that direction. That's the give and take that should happen with the charter system. If people are really being creative and stretching where they're going to go as a school community. You asked the question, Mr. Davis, because you asked me to address your question. I didn't have a chance to teach them earlier.
our charters, our LSGTs did submit grants. And I think that's the powerful thing about our charter system. The local school governance team submitted grants to our advisory team to use their money in a very unique way that fit their school community. Again, that's evidence of us encouraging creativity and growth among schools. And that can provide you what each school, what they did with those funds. You asked the question, if LSGTs are supposed to have input on curriculum, then why, you were making the statement that maybe they don't have the right to have input on curriculum, and so why were they given the choice of going to math or not? I think that's, for me, again, the irony of all this entire conversation has been, well, Dr. Means wants us to all move in one direction. If I wanted to be that person, then all 21 schools would be implementing Apple. It's the actual reverse. I said, go to your school communities, ask them if that's what they want to do, and that's the result was, and it's okay. Some schools chose to not to implement this year, and some schools did. You asked the question, what seems to be missing in the document is primarily who's responsible for serving as the formal conduit between the district and the individual schools. I think that's one thing that I've learned in getting guidance and talking with other experts in this space. The district has to be very deliberate about connecting with the co-chairs of the community co-chairs of LSGTs and working with the principals and saying, here's the agenda. So for example, I am very deliberate about saying, here's the agenda that we want to present to the board for this month's meeting. And then we talk it through. A principal has to think the same way with their LSGT. That's different. That's a new way of looking at their work. I think I answered all your questions, Mr. Davis. If I didn't, I know you will.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not trying to put, I'm not trying to create cookie cutter schools. I'm not. But I'm also, what I've tried to do when discussing the community is, again, making sure that students who end up doing a lot of transfer from school to school don't end up left out of the equation. And because, they were moving around not because they're voluntarily choosing to do so. And so it's just, I'm not a curriculum person, so I don't know, it's not my job to do so, but it's just making sure that as kids do move from school to school, that they feel like that they can step in a relatively short period of time and kind of get in the sync and not feel like they're kind of in the back of the class trying to figure out what everybody else is doing for month after month. So
I think it's the nuance, and I think this is a healthy conversation, just like we discovered last week. I think there's and I'm drafting an article around it. Our conversation last week around what standards-based, is there a difference between standards-based instruction and standardization? And those are two totally different things. And unfortunately in the community, when people hear standards-based instruction, they assume that it means standardization. It doesn't mean that at all. Standards-based means that every teacher should know what the standards are. And how you teach those standards, you can be as creative as you want to in teaching the standards. How you assess it, you can equally be as creative as long as it's standards-based. That's not standardization. But for some reason, that's kind of been turned around in our community as we've had these conversations. I think the same is true with the charter system. We are a system. We are a system. And so to your point, we are all moving in a direction together, but there's still nuances where a school can be unique. And so if a school wants to extend, if a school wants to use their grant dollars to create a Saturday school, that's great, that's creative, and you should do it. If a school, again, one of our elementary schools has already done this. They came to the district office and said, we are willing to have one less grade level teacher so we can move that into a specialist teacher because we believe the arts is really important. And we want to make sure the kids get the arts as well. And we will deal with the consequences of having one less grade level teacher. That's the type of creativity I embrace. But that's the work of a charter system. Again, we're moving in the same direction, but there are nuances that each school community should be able to exercise.
Thank you, sir.
Question?
There's been some conversation that's circulated about diminishing the role of the LHGT, power away from the LHGT. And one thing that I love with the implementation of this charter was that the LHGTs were to identify leaders among our community in places where we hadn't necessarily seen leadership come out naturally, right? So it was like to provide smaller spaces for people to be leaders, smaller spaces for people to be heard. And I think there is some feeling in the community that that's going to be diminished, and the hope would be, I think it's imperative that we keep the focus on making sure that we have leaders at each of those individuals. So what I've heard tonight was reinforced. That the modification of the charter is not to diminish the role of the LHGT. The modification of the charter is just like anything else, this is the way I see it. I'm asking and stating the same thing, I'm sorry, but the way I see it is you have a document that you're living by or operating by, and then you actually operate by it, you're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't really work. We've got to make some changes in how it actually would work out. But it's not going to be to diminish the role of the LHGT.
It's to encourage, no, I want to be very clear about it. No, it's actually to encourage creativity within the structure of the system.
And then the other thing is, when I read, I'll readily admit that one of my weaknesses is picking up on nuances. But when I read the charter, it's very difficult for me. But when I go to our website and read the bylaws, that feels better. I'm like, oh, I get it. This is easier and more operational. Well, how will the bylaws be affected by the bylaws change? The bylaws love me when I read them.
The bylaws are very clear.
Yeah.
And I think we would love an opportunity for legal counsel and the rest of our team. And eventually we'll bring it back to the full board for your engagement. For us to clarify it and to align it more to the bylaws. And to make sure that there's clarity for everyone in regards to what their role and responsibilities are within the system.
And I guess the charter language is just
But I want to be somewhat careful since one of the co-authors is sitting in the audience. I think that this first time around with the contracts for the charters, they're tough to read. And what we want to do is take some time to really try to clarify it. And I think what Dan shared with us this evening is clear. We haven't done that gallery walk of all the titles under Title 20 to say what are we waiving, and then eventually what do we need to take to the policy committee to construct workaround. I think Attorney Pruitt was really insightful in saying, and when you look at the year that we had, GBN is a perfect example. And GBN is the work, the employment, the fair dismissal act piece, and policy that we talked about. I think a lot of charter systems fall into this. That's why I said this is natural. A lot of charter systems will say, well, we have full authority to waive everything. Okay, you do. You equally have a responsibility to point out how will you function within your system. And I think Dr. Knotts has been very clear and has pointed out the way that the system is constructed, we also have an equal responsibility of meeting those goals. And so we can't take the extra funds and not consider what the ramifications are if we don't reach those goals. I mean, they're good, rigorous goals, but they're going to be difficult. for us to talk about, and it's going to require us to really look at our system in a critical way.
The examples that you gave about using many different ways of doing the Montessori model and the fixed the three objectives of the district that we need to. And principal comes to you and has the okay with our principal. Do you just make a decision and it's okay, or does it come for us as information from the board?
In some cases, it would require a vote, and so we will, the LSUT, the principal, and I will come to you and say, we're collectively making this recommendation. In some cases, it doesn't require your vote, and I think that's one of the things that we need to fix. We need to have some type of communication with that the board knows what's happening with the LSUT, maybe on a semi-annual basis, a quarterly basis, I don't know what it is. But I think as I've entered this first year, there was an infrastructure in terms of how we were going to talk about being a charter system. And I think this is a timely conversation.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification on timeline. So there's a motion that's been seconded with regards to you're working with council to come back. Do you feel like the timeline's going to be sufficient so that the LSGTs can be apprised of where we're going? Because I know that the mid-June meetings will talk all of it.
I think so. And we've talked with DOE, once we work with our LSGTs and we work with legal counsel, if there's language that we want to tweak and bring it back to you, eventually we would bring it to the Department of Education and they would act on it. But that's obviously it. You modified this contract. You modified it to include the career academy. If you remember, it was one of the essential innovative features that you had. So it's not unusual to take this contract language back. I'm really excited to give our legal counsel an opportunity to clarify things. Mr. Pruitt has been talking with other school attorneys across the state who are also in the charter system, and collectively as attorneys, they're all kind of trying to figure out the pathway. I think we have a good attorney that can help us find clarity.
Dr. Meeks has been emailing the board for quite some time now saying we really look at charter, we really think that there's as a review the charter, there are some concerns that there are some concerns. So part of the mistakes at the time was an issue for sure. But I think that giving an opportunity to work in the district for a school year under the current chair really identify all of the gaps versus a little bit like,
Now that LSGTs have been operational for just now that we have this scheduled rollout, sort of on LSGTs, all of that, so we're going to get a little actually established. What is the plan now to get onto the LSGT? Have our calendar rolling on? And the second question is, we're very specific in making sure that every LSGT is training properly.
It did. I would prefer James Burrow, who did an amazing job rolling out the first cohort iteration. What's the schedule for the next level of election?
Right, so the first initial membership, is staggered for some members are rolling off every 2 years, will be in December this year. Some members will stay on for another year. Depends on, they chose which, staggered. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how many members are rolling off. Of course, members who are rolling off, scheduled to roll off and run for another term. Those elections will be fall this year.
The other thing you never really talk about was how do we as a board actually engage with the board? So is that a part of this conversation?
I think we should have a conversation in terms of not only how you get to engage with the LSGTs, but we've talked about it before. We are scheduled to have an engagement, a board-on-board meeting with the Career Academy Advisory Board. I think the more you can hear from boards that are in that space of either an advisory board or a collection of LSGT members would be, I need to get some more thoughts on that engagement.
Yes, you have something to this point?
Question about, are we syncing up, yes, are we reducing the role of the LSGT? Dr. Lee's shown me those changes. My opinion, no, they're not. But Clarke County, by virtue of the work James and so on and Russ Cook, you guys have been a leader on school government. These training modules that were put together by Clarke Institute, we have taken them and repurposed them $85,000 each, so that other charter systems around the state can use them. And I think what happened is because of the change in the superintendent's office, things got out of sync. School governance teams have got all this excellent training, they're kind of ready to go. And it takes, as I said earlier, about a year for a new superintendent to come out of state. I mean, I know Dr. Reed, when he came to our fall conference, was scratching his head a little bit to get his hands around this. But the important question is, does the superintendent get it? Does the school board get it? And I see, I'm excited about what I see tonight because I think Dr. Reed is a point where he gets it. And I think he gets it. So I think there's a great opportunity there in the school government to really move forward.
I'll get them a whole lot more when we understand how we face with our LSGTs, because I like that's a huge missing.
We have, on that topic, we have some systems that insist when they do the flexibility and governance training, school board members are there, along with central office staff, principals, and school governors. Everybody's in the room together. Another thing some systems do is school board members will attend school governance team meetings, and they'll sit quietly and listen, not express their opinions. But the message you send by doing that to the school governance team is, what you do matters. We want to hear what you're doing. So those are some of the things that other school districts are.
We just had one build up on what Linda's question was. Dr. means if as people roll off, I wonder if we can solicit their feedback in terms of the experience and kind of somehow or the other try to assimilate that with that knowledge and that perception, and so that we can kind of build on.
Yes, sir.
been a great conversation. Thank you all for your input. Any more questions before we go? Motion and a second. All in favor? Thank you very much. Motion passes. If there's nothing else, the next item is to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you for being here.